the great, all-powerful Gannon Hymas, slayer of ducks, lover of women.
Only the heads that are banded.
Only the ones that are banded.
Wait,
Yeah.
you don't want to say banded women too loud because you're going to have all the girls trying to get banded.
Oh, yeah, man. You ain't put any bands on anybody, have you?
No, definitely not.
Okay, that's good, man. So, a little introduction about Gannon here. Gannon, I moved out here to this little valley about 7 years ago, and I was helping out with the scout group, and Gannon was like 11 at the time. Little Gannon, he's got big now. He's taller than me, but he was out there, and I was like, okay, Gannon, we gotta get this done. We gotta get this done. So we get you up here, and he's like, oh, don't worry about it, Ron. I'm gonna go duck hunting. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, I'm not interested in scouts. I'm going duck hunting. And so from that time on, I was like, who's this little kid duck hunting, man? How's he shooting a gun? How old were you when you started shooting a gun?
So I think I shot my first duck when I was 6 years old.
What kind of gun were you using?
I was using a 20 gauge. I used a 20 gauge for just that year, and then I think when I was 7, my dad got me a 12 gauge.
You were 7, your dad didn't that knock you on your butt, man?
A few times, but
A few times. So we talk about mentors on the show a lot, and like if I was gonna pick one mentor that helped me out the most with duck hunting, it would be Gannon and his dad. But Gannon's dad works a lot, but Gannon was always down to go on quick morning hunts with me and just kind of show me the ropes. And I remember one time specifically, I went over to your house, and I was with you and your dad, and your dad's like, okay, let's hear your duck call. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
And like, you're all just letting it go in that garage. Wah, 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 wah. And like, I called, man. I felt like, the shortest kid on the basketball team, man. Just like, I felt so silly, but yeah, you and your dad worked me through it and, helped me get on that call. And so having mentors is a big thing, and a special thanks to Gannon for getting us out there and taking us hunting. And then after a while, Brian was Gannon's scout leader too. And then Gannon turned around 15, and that's when I started duck hunting. He took me out a few times, but Brian has a good story with Gannon.
Yeah, we this last year was the first time I got to hunt with Gannon, so we got out and we just were trying to figure out where we wanted to hunt up in the Overton Game Preserve. And Gannon's like, well, I know the geese are in this certain area, so we specifically set out that morning just to get some Canadians. So we had taken some specs. There were 2 or 3 specs in the area, but they're tough to get out here. So hunted all morning. It's had kind of a tough morning. We have a goose come in, and it was a single, and Ron's on the jerk string, and he's pulling the decoys.
It went a little bit different than that, man. So what happened is Gannon goes, here one comes, and Brian and Gannon grabbed their guns, and I was like, should I go do the jerk string? Gannon's like, yeah, go do the jerk string.
So Gannon gets on a call, and man, Gannon's just, Ron said Gannon's pretty good on a call, and man, these birds out here don't usually react to a call that late in the season, and man, he turned that goose. I mean, he turned him right back into us and set him down right in front of us, and it was pretty impressive to watch him just work that call. This goose comes in, and Gannon and I both come up on him at the same time and just laid this goose out. And so Gannon looks at me, he's like, well, did you get it or did I get it? I'm like, honestly, I don't know. I think we both shot at the same time. I don't know which one of us got it. So Ron at this time's out in the middle of the water. It was before we were running rock, and he's out in the middle of the water getting this goose, and he's like,
you kept whistling at me too. You're like, back, Ron,
yeah,
back.
We're yelling at him, trying to point him to the goose, right? And so Ron,
10 yards in the decoys.
exactly. So Ron picks up his goose, and he says, well, hey boys, this got jewelry. Whose is it? And so Gannon and I both, we didn't know. And so Gannon looks at me and he says, well, have you got one yet? And I'm like, no, I haven't got a band yet. And he goes, well, you have now. And he hands the duck over. So, normally you'd draw straws or however you want to do it.
Rock, scissors
rock,
for it.
paper, scissors for it. But Gannon was so gracious to let me have my first band on that one. And then we hunt a little bit more, and finally, first duck of the day comes in. And Ron had left by this time, I think. And first duck of the day comes in, and the only duck we saw all day, in fact. Mm-hmm. Gannon drops it. Of course, it can't land straight. It's got to land belly up on the water. So we let it sit out there for a little bit, and they're finally like, you know what? Nothing's going to come in with this duck belly up. So Gannon goes out to grab this duck, and he gets about halfway out, and then here comes a flock of geese we've been waiting for all morning. We kind of knew what time they were normally in, and it was a little bit later that time, and so we jump back into the blind. Gannon was able to pick a single off out of that one that was also banded. So by now, I mean, this was a flock of probably 20, 30 Gannon. And then, so now by this time, we're like, well, that was the flock. That was one chance we're going to get today.
We're done.
We're done. So we decided, well, let's just pack everything up and head home. And so we could both get out in the water and start packing up decoys. And we got about the first decoy thrown into the shore, and here comes another flock of geese, the second flock. So we didn't get shots on those ones at all. They actually landed on the backside of an island that was across from Gannon. I don't think Gannon was real happy about chasing him. He's like, I think I'm going to go see if I can walk up on him. So he goes clear across this pond. It was probably 500 or 600 yards out.
Did you walk across the pond?
We
Or
walked
did you go
across
around?
it, mud up to.
Because I knew if any more geese were going to come, they weren't. Can't compete with live geese right there. So I was like, I got to get these birds up. And didn't work out.
No, Gannon walked and he was the mud over that pond's pretty close to knee high. By the time Gannon came back,
Yeah, you about filling your waders up once you get your knees dumped in that
yeah,
mud.
Gannon was not a happy camper by the time he got back into the blind. So, but for me it was a great hunt because that was the first hunt I'd ever had with Gannon. And Gannon's a young kid, and I didn't know quite what to think of Gannon. I hadn't spent enough time with him really know him. And it's probably one of my most enjoyable hunts of the season. Probably actually one of my most enjoyable hunts overall. And Gannon's just such a good. He's not a kid anymore, but he's such a good kid, and he's so humble, and he's willing to teach. And I think that's what made it such a good hunt. We just all have a good time. There's no one of the things Ron and I kind of insist on is that when you come into the blind, there's no ego, and everybody's kind of on the same level. Certainly, there are going to be people that are smarter than others that are going to
A lot
know
of people
more.
smarter than you, Brian.
Everybody's smarter than me, just about. So my dog's definitely smarter than me. So
That's why I take you along with me, man, because you're smarter than I am. So
but
we're halfway there between both of us.
It makes it an enjoyable hunt when everybody can kind of just get along and just kind of relax. So
Hey, let me ask you a question, man. Why did you decide to walk across that pond? That pond's like the suckiest pond ever to walk across.
Because I'm dumb.
Is that the
I don't
worst
know.
thing you've done duck hunting? What's the worst, the
Definitely
worst
not.
experience where you got out there and you said, "Oh no, this was dumb."
Okay, so last year, me and my buddy of mine, we were on a marsh, and there's birds working in the middle of the marsh.
Mm-hmm.
You guys know which one I'm talking about.
Okay.
And my dad and my brother, they wanted to be on the north side, but I wanted to be at this spot because there was a couple thousand birds
I
right there.
remember that hunt. Your dad dropped you off up
Yeah.
there.
My dad drops me off, and the water's probably up to my belly button.
Oh no.
And he drops me off at it was probably 8:30, and
You leave the dog with you?
no, because we couldn't have anything there because it was too deep.
Yeah.
So me and my buddy sat there till 2:30, 8:30 to 2:30. Couldn't sit down, couldn't do nothing. And I mean, we shot a limit, but it's still probably one of the worst things I've done.
Were you just cold?
No, it was mud. I mean, it was mud up to your shins.
Uh-huh.
And then you're standing in belly button deep water. You can't sit down. You can't do anything. You can't put your arms down because it'd be wet. So you're just holding your gun above your head, just sitting there. And,
And then when you shoot a duck, you have to go out and get
I
it.
tried out there to get it.
I bet you shot him close that day, huh?
Tried to.
and then Gannon goes ahead and returns a favor for us. A couple weeks ago, we were gonna go hunt a place that we like to hunt. So Gannon and his dad and their family had been up there the day before, and we're like, "Hey, what should we do?" He's like, "Oh yeah, it was good. We limited out. We came home. They had a good day." And Ron and I get out there in the morning, and we hunted sub-zero temperatures, and we couldn't launch the boat because the boat wouldn't start. It was so cold. And we get out there, we found one 10-foot hole of open water with a couple ducks on it. Took ducks, and I mean, it was not even huntable, and it was a 3-hour drive from our house. So
Hey, but in Gannon's defense, he did say, I hunted it at noon.
he did hunt it at noon, but I don't think it was thawed by noon.
No, it wasn't.
We left before noon or just after noon. It wasn't thawed yet. So, but it's kind of one of those things. You get out there and you have it's a crappy day. It's not, maybe the birds aren't flying or you're up to your belly button in water all day, or it's sub-zero temperatures, but you could still have a great hunt out of it.
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean,
for sure.
you get good guys. Ron and I went sub-zero, and we still had a good day. Even
I looked over at one point and Brian's beard had icicles coming off of it.
rock was frozen. I mean, he got out of the water. He got a duck and brought it back, and as he walked out of the water, you could see the icicles forming on him. It was just pretty crazy. But
Yeah, he did.
We
Okay,
also-
though. We had his vest on him.
we also met some hunters on that hunt that tried to launch that morning, couldn't even hunt. And one of the things is we talk about the mentoring and how good Gannon's been with us. We just kind of same with those guys. They're like, you guys are the first nice duck hunters we've ever met.
Yeah, it's a big secret. Well, I want to get back to talk about the geese a little bit. So, when you're hunting, what kind of goose spread would you put out this late in the season?
So late season geese, they're either the locals that have been here
Mm-hmm.
since over the summer, here and hatched here and everything. So they've seen the game farm spread the whole year.
Yeah.
So they've seen spreads every other day. And then if not, then you got the birds coming migrating in from north, and they've seen spreads all the way down from Canada, Montana, Idaho, Utah, all the way down.
Mm-hmm.
And so I usually try to go light. I try to go a light spread and make it look as natural as possible. Try to, if I'm hunting, I mean, that pond we hunted last year, me and Brian and you, and we killed those a couple geese. It was a loaf pond. They went and feed in the morning, and then they'd come there around noon. And so I just put out, I think we put out like 7 floaters.
Yeah.
And made it look like they just landed, like they just came back from feeding, and just try to go light and natural.
Yeah. So when you say you put out 7 feeders, you just put them out in like a nice straight line with a gap in the middle is what you're trying to do.
Yeah. Try to get a little hole for them to land, but usually with that little decoys, it doesn't take much. They usually land right in with them.
Now, Brian said something about a band. Like, have you ever had a fight over a band, or how do you solve whose band it is? Are you pretty just giving, like, oh, it's yours?
I've been pretty fortunate with
Yeah.
how many bands I've got. So now that I'm getting older, it's a lot easier to give bands
Give them up?
not away, but like, you know what I mean. But yeah, usually we try to draw for them if it's up.
How do you do it, though? Explain that.
What we've done is we have shells in the past and get like 3 of the same color and then 1 different color,
Mhm.
put in a beanie and just draw for it.
Is that what you do? Okay, cool. That's a good idea. Yeah, I was wondering how you do it, because I've heard you could, like, do reeds and you pick one that's smaller, but the shells in the beanie, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I like that. Now, talking to you about geese, what do you think about throwing those mojos and like they had the big geese flappers? How do you feel about those?
Personally, I've never used them, but like, I don't know. I know a lot of people use, what are they called? The flappers that you like pull on the string out in the spread. And I know people that use those and those work, but I've personally never used them. I usually just use a flag until they get within where they can see my spread, and that's always worked for me. So I know they don't like mojos at all.
Yeah.
And so that's why we have the remotes for the lucky ducks, and for combo hunts like in Idaho this year we've used them multiple times where we have the remotes and just turn them off when the geese come and turn them on when we see the ducks, and it's worked pretty well.
Now, you said something interesting earlier about like when you turn the motors off, what way do you want the wings facing?
So you got to try to get the dark side towards the sun, so you don't got that big white wing. Just
how many tries do you have to do until you get that, man?
sometimes 5 or 6, but gotta get it.
So Gannon, what's the difference on a spread you would set in your calling style maybe for down here in Overton where we kind of get birds have been shot at all season versus, I know you've been lucky enough that you went to school up in Idaho this year, and so you've hunted Idaho quite a bit this year. What are the differences in your spreads and your calling technique in those 2 places?
So a big difference for me is the species of birds we kill up there. Up there, it's mostly strictly mallards. Like, I think we killed probably 90% mallards up there. And
Really?
so up there, mostly just mallard decoys, and depends, we're hunting the snake a lot, so we'll just do some river spreads, which you don't need a lot. You'd think you're trafficking birds all day, but it's usually just 2 mojos and a dozen decoys because you're usually walking in a mile. And so up there, the birds are a lot more responsive to calls because they haven't been hunted as much. It's usually their first stop after Canada, after that big cold front pushes through. And I usually like to, when they first get there, you could tell that they are new birds because they're dumb. Like, just the simplest way.
Where are
to
they
put it.
coming from?
Usually Canada or Montana and Idaho. Like,
Do you think it was better this year because they didn't allow hunting in Canada?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think a lot better.
Did you miss not hunting in Canada this year?
Yeah, but I think I made up for it in Idaho.
You let them come to you. Okay, go ahead though. Sorry.
Yeah, so like what I was saying is the new birds definitely wanted to be screamed at this year, and I know. And I could tell that, like, you get those big cold fronts, and then the next hunt you go out and those birds just wanted to be screamed at. We'd have 3 or 4 people just absolutely ripping the calls.
Yeah.
And birds try to land in the middle, you just get on them, and they just kind of pick up and glide right in, and then you get 2 weeks later and you get those birds that have been there for a few weeks, they've seen some spreads, they start getting a little stale, and you just gotta let off a lot.
Hey, so let me ask you a question. Were they just coming and just dumping right in the middle of your decoys, or were they like circling like 7 times before they came in?
Dependent on the day. I mean, we have a couple spots where it's pretty tight. Like, we're hunting a 15-foot wide river channel, and they got to do it pretty tight. So they usually come in on the first or second pass, especially if we got a good wind at our back.
Yeah.
But no, we definitely had a few hunts this year where we have a little marsh up there that we hunted, and there's one particular sunny day, no wind, just dead calm, and I think we worked a group of like 30 mowers for 6 or 7 passes.
Really?
Just kept on patient, just little feeder chuckles, and just let them have it. When they try to leave, circle them back, and that one group finished, and we had 3 guys and we killed 9 birds out of it.
When do you hit them with the call?
Depends.
Like, let's say they're circling slow, like a nicer slow circle.
So I usually try to hit them on their turn away. So their turn away is like usually when they're like, all right, we're gonna head out, and then you hit them just quick comeback call, and if it doesn't work, then you just hail on them. You just get everyone to start going, getting excited, and then when they bake back, I usually try to quiet down, just do a couple quacks, little feeder chuckles, just try to get them tight in, and it's usually worked pretty good.
Yeah. So me and Brian had the same thing happen the other day. We had like me and Brian reverse roles, because Brian's typically the guy that's like, no, don't shoot those, they're too far. Don't shoot those too far. We had these pins. We were down on a pond. There's a few other guys down there with us, and I swear they circled like 6 or 7 times, huh, Brian? And finally Brian's like, dude, we should take them. And I was like, no, dude, one more circle and they're in. And sure as crap, man. They came in close. They went out, and that's when I said wait. And then the guy shot in a different blind, and
that's the difficult part
gone,
about,
man.
I mean, public land hunting is difficult anyways. When you got public land hunting for some reason this year, and I think it's COVID, people just want to get out of the house, but man, our game preserve is ridiculously busy. So what I've noticed, I hunted Saturday, and I was in a different blind. I had some birds working. I turned them, and I had about there were 3 or 4 pintails in this group, and they're circling, they're working their way down every pass, and they're coming right in their decoys, and then the guy next to me shoots, so they're gone. So we lost that. The other one, I worked some more, and
well, was he shooting high, or did he just have something to shoot at? I bet he just had something to shoot at, man.
I think there might have been a ruddy on the water, to be honest with you. But you know,
it's Overton, man.
It is what it is. It's part of public land hunting. It's what makes it such a challenge, which makes it. I guess if you can limit it Overton, it's an accomplishment, just because it's so difficult with everybody you have hunting around you, and so I think it makes it. I think it's probably a bigger deal to limit there than if you're out somewhere that there's a ton of ducks and not a lot of people, just because it's a lot more difficult. I mean, you know, we had it to where I was working some more the other day, and Ron couldn't quite get a shot off at them, and they finally came down, and they went right out in the middle of the lake right in front of Ron on his blind. But you know, that's the thing, is these ducks are smart. They've been shot at all the way from Canada down until they get to us in Nevada, and then you figure everybody and their brother's shooting at them every other day once they get down here. So it's warm, they're going to stay here for quite a while, and they'll usually kind of cycle through 2 or 3 different areas out here, but they're going to stay around. I mean, they're not going to go anywhere until they're forced to, and it's warm enough here, and a lot of times that they'll be here long enough where they just finally turn around and go back up north, you know. And so that's one of the things, and I think that's one of the challenges we have as hunters, is how do we educate people to not ruin somebody else's hunt, or tell them, hey, you know, this is what's going on, and how do you get that to stop? And I think that's one of Gannon's things with us is, you know, Gannon's like, I wouldn't shoot that. But then Gannon gets over to Overton, we're hunting Thanksgiving Day, and we're all in a blind, and Gannon and Ron's like, should we take him? Should we take him? And they were high, and Gannon's like, sure. And so we shot them, and so we shot at birds that were high, but I think sometimes your hand's forced out here to shoot a little bit higher than you normally would.
Definitely Overton gets the best of you sometimes.
Hey, but like Gannon said something interesting on Brian's line of thought. You said something about difference when ducks come in on a cold front. Tell everybody about that.
Oh yeah, so you always get those big pushes of birds migrating down. They'll try to follow. I mean, they don't gotta leave unless they're forced to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like in Idaho, like we had tons of birds, and then we got like 6 inches of snow, and it dropped from 30 as a low to like 2 as a low, and so we lost everything that night. Like boom, like in a day we lost all of our birds, and so on the fronts of those cold fronts, you always usually get a push of birds in this time of the year, and so that's like last year, me and my dad hunted, and I went and scouted the day before. We had strong winds, like 20 miles.
That was after a
winds.
nasty cold front.
Yeah,
too.
nasty. Like it got way cold down here, and I was like, "There's gonna be a lot of birds here." And it happened. There was 2 odd days in a row. There was the 31st and the 1st, and then we were like, "All right, let's hit on the 2nd." And it was after a big cold front, so I went out and scouted, and there happened to be a lot of gadwall and stuff on this pond, and so we set up there and shot a 3-minute limit on an Overton, which is very satisfying to do.
Yeah, well, I guess it's not unheard of, but yeah, that's interesting. That's something I learned tonight was that after a cold front, you get new ducks in. Like Brian was saying, where these old ducks have been here for a week or 2, they know. They know, like, if I go over here by this blind, I'm going to get shot. If I puddle up in the middle where no one can hit me, I'm going to be safe. And so watching that weather is important to get ducks.
Key.
So now I want to talk to you a little about decoys, man. Like, so you said something in Idaho they're all mallards, which I didn't know that.
A lot of them.
But I mean, what species haven't you shot in Overton?
I don't think anything. I think I've shot basically everything out here.
You got a wood duck out of here too, huh?
I shot a hen wood duck out of here. Yeah.
So,
But I mean, like obviously the ocean ducks, like I shot a harlequin or
like obviously the sea ducks and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't shot a speck down here either. I've seen quite a few of them.
Yeah.
But I haven't killed a speck down here. I've killed quite a few snows. Basically.
Yeah, we have
all
a
different
huge
puddle
mixed
ducks.
bag down here, huh?
Huge, yeah.
It's like all the ducks come
Unreal.
down here to party, man.
it's
You
Vegas.
know? So when you're putting out your decoys, what kind of decoys do you put out? Do you just put out a bunch of mallards when you go out to Overton, or what do you do?
No, so again, like when we talk about scouting, when I scouted the day before last year's hunt, I try to mimic what I'm seeing. So
Yeah.
if I go out there and there's 20 mallards and 30 teal and 10 pintail, then I'm going to bring those 3 species.
Yeah.
And usually in Overton we have a lot of widgeon this time of year. We get that late push of widgeon.
They're here, man. I saw them yesterday.
Yeah. And so if I were to go out tomorrow, I'd probably bring like some widgeon.
Mm-hmm.
And we always have a few pins around.
Yeah.
We get those late season pin push. And so I usually just try to base it off of what I see. I mean, scouting's key. You got to scout.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. You talk about migration and late season pin and widgeon. What would you say the transition in ducks are? Like what comes first as far as the ducks migrating down here?
Mostly teal. Like
So you
for
teal.
sure. Like we get those. You'll see early season we have a ton of blueing, which they say they're blueing, but I think we get a lot of cinnamons down here.
Yeah.
And those are always first to push through.
And then we get the green wing teal.
Right behind them. And then you always got those local mallards and stuff that stick around.
Yeah.
But those pintail actually come pretty soon after too. Pintail move pretty early around here.
Yeah. And then the canvasback come down from the rubies,
Mhm.
and they go over to like they'll go up by Alamo and stuff. I think they stick up by Alamo, man.
Yeah.
I haven't seen many of them push down to Overton.
I mean, you'll see them out in those big ponds sometimes, but
Yeah.
they usually stick pretty thick up there.
It's weird how the canvasback and the redheads come at the same time, man.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people will shoot a canvasback, or they'll shoot a redhead and be like, "I got a canvasback," and like, "No, it's a redhead," you know. And like that's something you gotta be very careful with because how many cans do you have,
We
Brian?
have 2 cans and 2 redheads in Nevada, so
Yeah.
I mean it's pretty easy to overlimit on those, and that's and I think that was one of the most frustrating hunts I ever had. As we were up in an area shooting ducks, and we had cans. We had some can decoys out, and the cans were landing the decoys 10, 20 at a time, which is unheard of out there. And so we had a limit of cans and couldn't shoot anything because all we were seeing is cans after that. So it makes it a frustrating hunt when you see all these birds and you can't shoot any of them. So but that's one of the things that as mentors, I think that's one of the most important things we can teach is how you can identify ducks. So you can identify them by look of the duck, by size of the duck, by flight elevation. So certain ducks are going to fly low, certain ducks are going to fly high, how they act. We all know pintail's got a big, huge, fat head. So those things to where we can keep these hunters out of the game warden's ticket book. You know, that's a big one for new hunters is how do you identify what I have? Tough ones, I mean, blue wing and cinnamon are pretty close to each other. So identifying those, I think a lot of times they get mixed up. I did see a blue wing out of here. One of the guys shot the one day, and I had to look at it 2 or 3 times to make sure it was a blue wing. But the cool thing about out in Overton is if you hunt it, you will get just about one of everything by the time you're done.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's my very first duck ever hunting was out in Overton. It was a wood duck.
Yeah.
Which out here that particular year, the entire year they harvested 12 wood ducks out of here. So, I mean, wood ducks are pretty rare for around these parts, but they're there. We've created such a population of Canadian geese that they've actually migrated into the Las Vegas Valley from Overton and started filling up all the golf courses in Las Vegas. So there's some habitat up here for them that we can keep some birds in year round. Ron and I are hoping to help bolster that a little bit as well.
Yeah, I was talking to the boys down there at Overton today, and they said that they usually bring in 100 Canadian geese a season to try to get the population up down here. They bring them in from up north, but they weren't able to do it this year because of dang COVID. So that kind of sucks. That's probably why we're not shooting so many geese out there this year. When you're throwing out your duck decoys late season, what kind of spreads are you throwing out, man? You throwing out just filling up the whole marsh, or what are you doing?
Depends. I mean, we got some spots that can get pretty loaded, so we'll sometimes throw a couple dozen decoys out. But usually late season, I go light and try to focus more on motion and stuff. Because on a strong windy day, I want to throw out a mojo.
Yeah.
Try to center them up, usually pretty good. But sometimes they don't like it. So you got to pull it. You got to try new things. You got to throw out jerk cord, those little butt ripplers. And I think the biggest thing is just trying different things. I mean, it's not, you learn something new every time you go out. Like, I think the other day we had, we had a dozen decoys out, and I think we ended up pulling like 6 of them and just ended up having 6 decoys, and they were finishing a lot better.
Really?
Yeah.
6, huh?
Yeah.
When you're setting them out, so when you're walking over to, you gotta look at everybody's spread. I've seen some of the newer guys, when they set out their spread, they'll throw out the mallards with the widgeons, and it'll be in one big blob, like all the ducks mixed together. Like, do you find that effective, or do you like to, like, what species can you mix and match, and what species do you want to keep separate from each other?
I think if you look at ducks feeding, they usually are all together, but you'll notice that you'll have the teal and the mallard and the widgeon. They usually are closer to the bank.
Yeah.
They like to dabble up against the bank and stuff, but I've usually noticed the pintail and stuff are usually out the farthest.
Really?
And so when I usually put my spread out, because pins usually are the hardest to decoy sometimes, and so I usually put them at the end of my spread, and just, I like to mix everything together, but spread it out. You know what I mean?
Spread it out. Yeah, because I remember one point I went out with you. You threw some so far out. And I was like, why are we throwing all these far out? And you're like, well, I throw these far out. I throw these ones close in, because these ducks are typically far out, and then they'll come into the middle of these ducks, and sure as crap, man, it worked.
Yep.
So
A lot of trial and error.
yeah, it's a lot of scouting, right? You get up on that hill, you look to see how the ducks are acting, look to see what they're doing, and that's what you do.
Mm-hmm.
So
The
there's
idea is
different ways to scout too. Like Brian said earlier, that sometimes people don't have time to come out. Like, we work 9 to 5 jobs, and Gannon was in high school, so thank goodness we had a good scout that could go look at everything, you know. But I couldn't get out there and scout every day. But if you get on these Facebook pages and these different groups, people will post what they're shooting, and then you can base your spread off what people are shooting.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll tell you, I have a love-hate relationship with that. I think Gannon does too. I mean, because, yeah, you can see what everybody's shooting, but everybody can see your hole. So that goose hunt that we went out on last year, and you know, we both got banded geese, and so everybody that's a duck hunter knows that it's all about the jewelry, right? Everybody wants the jewelry.
Mm-hmm.
So a friend of ours had sent Ron a text message when we're sitting in the blind saying, "Hey, how you guys doing?" So he knew we were out hunting, and Ron's like, "Oh yeah, we got a couple banded geese," and sent him a picture. 10 minutes later, that picture was all over Facebook with the exact blind we were sitting in when we shot the geese. So it's, you certainly don't want to sell your spot. So let people figure out the X on their own. Let them put the work in. If you don't have time to scout, know the area you're hunting. So Ron and I are pretty well versed with Overton. I think sometimes, so we have bull rushes, fields, and ponds, and you have to pick one before you make a reservation. So we'll pick a general blind based on kind of what we're feeling, where we think the ducks are going to be, this time of year, hunting pressure, all sorts of different things. And sometimes we'll turn in the blind that we have just because the people that we're hunting around, we don't know, and we know that's going to be a problem. So sometimes the best thing you can do is reset and move to where you're going to give yourself a better opportunity despite who's around you. Doesn't matter what ducks are in, because if the ducks are right next to you and you know where the ducks are and you got idiots blowing them off of the water, it's really not going to do you any good to go sit in that blind. It's just going to get you frustrated. In fact, a couple weeks ago on a Sunday, I had the last ball. I had ball 74. It was loaded. I think normally a draw takes 15, 20 minutes. I think we were an hour into it and they were still drawing a sign of blinds. And so I looked at Ron, I'm like, I'm going to pick a blind just so that blind's full, and then we're going to go home. And it just wasn't worth for me and my son at the time, for that frustration, because we knew what we were dealing with when we got out to the blind. We knew it was going to be a bunch of guys shooting high. You weren't going to be allowed to let your ducks work. Nothing you were going to do was going to help your hunt.
You didn't make that choice on your own, though, man. You said, "I'll stay, Cody, if you want."
I did. I left it. I love hunting with my boy, and so I left it completely up to my son what he wanted to do. I'm like, "I'll do whatever you want to do. We'll take the blind that you want to take. You let me know." And he's like, "It's just not worth the hassle." I mean, it's bad when there's guys showing up, and I get his public land hunting, and we're trying to teach people, and as Ron and I are huge on the education part. But when you got guys coming with no waders, no dogs, street clothes with no camo,
cooler full of cervezas,
yeah, and each of them is carrying 2 coolers up to the blind with you, you know it's going to be a difficult hunt, to say the very least. So I think that's one of those things. You got to know those areas. Sometimes it's best to cut bait when you need to cut bait, and it stinks because I love to be out there and hunt ducks, and I like to get shots on ducks. But if you're gonna have a whole day and all you come home with just frustrated and mad because you didn't get an opportunity because somebody else, then it wasn't really worth it for you.
Yeah, something I found though, like to kind of combat that, something I've been doing this season is when we get out there's certain areas where you hunt, you kind of all park in a certain area and then you go out and hunt together, And if you can figure out who's going out and hunting next to you, I'll just go and have a friendly conversation with them. Like, "Hey, how you doing? What's your name? You do it much?" And if they say no, or if they indicate that they're kind of a new hunter, I'll kind of give them some tips, to make them happy. Be like, "Hey, these are the kind of ducks working. This is how I would set up my spread over there." And then I'll say, "Hey, if the ducks are working you, man, I won't shoot. I'll wait." And so that puts in the back of their head, like, "Hey, you know what? Okay, he's gonna wait on me." And then I'll even tell them, I'll be like, "Hey, thanks, man, for letting those ducks work." And sometimes they haven't let the ducks work, but I'll still smile and be like, thanks for letting those ducks work, man."
And yeah, that to build on that, there was multiple times this year, public land spots, where we'd show up in Idaho and there'd be another group there. And it's just best to communicate with them. Yeah. We're all hunters. We all want to do the same thing. We all want to get on some birds. But if they're going to set up 100 yards from you, it's not going to be a good hunt for either of you.
Mm-mm.
And so go talk to them. Just be like, "Hey, where you guys thinking about heading?" Because whoever's there first, they got the first pick. And we had it twice this year where we showed up and same thing happened. There's guys there, and both times we just took them with us. There's just one guy each time and came with us, and we ended up having great hunts.
Yeah, man, it's all about building that camaraderie. And aren't you still in contact with some of those guys?
Yeah,
Like you text
for
each
sure.
other?
Well, and it's part of it is you're building that camaraderie and you're building those relationships Ron and I talked about, and this podcast has been kind of a blessing for Ron and I because we've had a lot of guys reach out to us and actually ask to go hunting, and a lot of guys actually at the game preserve say, "Hey, do you mind taking me out and showing me the ropes a little bit?" So these guys are guys that want to learn, and there's nobody to show them. So if we can get guys that show them, and we had the luck on Saturday of this last week of the one pond we were hunting. We pretty much locked up the whole pond with people we knew, and it was just, you know, the draw was there, and we'd all reserved ponds, so we knew that day that guys were pretty much going to let the birds work, and you were going to have a little bit better of a hunt. So the more people we can get, and the more time we take with new hunters and tell them, hey, here's how you do it the right way, and here's how you don't piss everybody off, and you actually earn respect from the other hunters versus having everybody hate you. I mean, one thing that you're going to get everybody to hate you is you go out and you start blasting coots all day long. Although Gannon and I on that goose hunt, we both almost shot a coot because we saw some jewelry on a coot.
Definitely saw a bandicoot.
And if we would have seen it come
right.
back, and Ron's arguing with us, we
I
actually
100% don't believe you.
I actually talked to the game preserve manager, and he said that they caught some coots when they were doing banding, and one time they banded a few of them just for the heck of it. So, but
Silly.
you know, if you're out there and you got ducks working, especially early in the morning, is when generally the best hunting is out here first thing in the day, and the birds start moving, and you're out there blasting coots off the water, and it's just scaring all the other birds out of the hunt. You're gonna make everybody that's around you just angry. So,
Or like when we were out there the other day, man, remember like I had a couple singles drop in, but we had a big flock working, and we missed the opportunities on those singles. But I looked at you and said, hey, let's just wait. Let's see if we can't get this flock dropping in. And the same thing goes for somebody else. I mean, if you have a less desirable duck like a ruddy or a buffalo drop into your decoys as a single, that sucker's probably going to stay there for a little bit. Am I wrong? And so if you look down the way, or you look over and you see a nice group of pins working someone else's decoys, it don't hurt to wait, you know, and let them get the shot on that.
well, and like, so geese out here, I mean, that's, everybody wants the geese out here, and so if we see geese working somebody who's blind, we're not gonna shoot at ducks. Now, if I got a mallard coming right into my decoys, I'm gonna take a mallard. I mean, that's just part of it. But if I've got, you know, a teal coming into my decoys, I'm gonna let that teal go and let that guy have an opportunity on harvesting those geese, because they're harder to work, they're harder to get in. And I know Ron a couple weeks ago had somebody across from him, and he told him, and it's somebody we hunt around quite a bit. And he told him, he goes, hey, if I see your geese working, I won't take a duck.
That was on the youth hunt. His kids were hunting geese, and my kids were shooting anything. So
Yeah, so it's, I think when you do those things, it creates that relationship with other people that helps you in the long run, because then hopefully when you have the geese working you're blind, that same person's going to give you that same leeway. So, and I think Gannon's really good with that stuff. I think Gannon's an excellent hunter. First off, I mean, he's going to let Gannon wants to get the ducks right down in front of him, so I think that's all of our desire. And Gannon's taught us a lot, and he's been really good with us, and he's good with other guys. I mean, he's taught my boy some stuff, and you know, I think when you've got anybody that's willing to take somebody out and teach him, whether it's the way you would teach him or the way or not, it's going to be a positive thing. We grow the sport by getting people out hunting. We get people buying licenses. We get people buying duck stamps. A lot of these guys are going to hunt once or twice a year. So
and they just don't have the time.
yeah, if you think about it, you get a new guy into hunting, he hunts once or twice a year. Even if you get 20 guys, that's only 20 hunts a year.
Mm-hmm.
You're 20 or 40 at the most. So you're really not destroying your opportunity that much more, but you're increasing that habitat more every time you do it. So I'm not saying you got to take everybody out to your favorite spots and take them to your honey holes, but you know, get them in a blind, take them out to Overton where you know it's going to be a tough hunt anyways, and let them experience the hunt. We have a guy that's now it's like crack to him now. We took him out hunting. He didn't want to hunt. Took him out one time. Now he's bought 2 guns since then, and he's been out every weekend. He's saying, hey, I reserved a blind, you know, which one he wants to come with me. So it's good because you're driving a passion, and so we do the research because we have the passion. They get the passion, they're going to want to do the research, because if they're not on ducks, they're going to want to figure out why they're not on ducks. So
And it's nice to have people on your team, you know, like you have people on your team and you're not able to go out that day. You call up, you say, hey, I'm going out this day. You going out? No, I'm not going out. And be like, well, what should I do? And they'll be like, well, this is what you should do. But in order to get that, you have to give, you know.
Build friendships.
Yeah, you build that friendship forever, huh? Like,
and
it makes
for
it
us,
nice.
our go-to is really Gannon and his dad, John, and we'll call him a lot and say, hey, we're struggling with this. what do you think we should do? Or we're heading to this new lake that we know you've hunted before, and where would you go? Kind of what part of the lake would you want to be on? And so they've been really good with it. Ron and I sunk a boat, last season. Ron's first phone call was actually to John and said, hey, what do we do? And so those relationships are good. And John, if he knows we're out hunting and he hasn't heard back from us at a certain time, he'll call us and say, hey, just want to make sure everything's okay. So they're looking out for you, and you're in turn looking out for them, and it makes everything better for everybody else. And we get Gannon in a blind with us, and man, it's just
like having an expert, man. It's like having the doctor in the blind. He knows exactly what to do.
Definitely not an expert.
Well, hey, you pretty close, man.
Always learning something every time.
I guess that's true, right? Like, I was talking about this on the phone with you the other day. I was like, there's 2 ways to learn, or there's 3 ways to learn. There's 1, by doing something wrong. 2, by doing something right, and you have to get out there and do it. And the 3rd way is to have a mentor with you. And the fastest way to learn is with a mentor. And we've spent a lot of sucky hunts just learning.
We've done a lot of it wrong. We've done a little bit right, and sometimes you do the wrong thing that turns into the right thing for something else. So it's learning, and every opportunity you have to grow. None of us are expert hunters. There's no such thing. I've listened to some podcasts that talk about professional hunters. There's no such thing as a professional hunter. I mean, there's very few people that are actually making a living off hunting, and if you get down to brass tacks, they're not making a living off of hunting. They're making a living off of television shows, or they're like making a living off of a podcast or a radio show. They're not making a living by going out and hunting.
Yeah,
they're making a living by telling the story of the hunt. So none of us are professionals. We all can learn something, and I don't care. There may be a brand new guy that's never hunted ducks before, but he comes in and tells you something that you didn't know, and it could be about duck hunting, or it could be about something else, or it could be hey, have you guys tried this yet? I just read up on this. Because a lot of times your new hunters they don't want to look like idiots.
No, they're going to study it.
They're going to start watching YouTube, the YouTube University.
So they're going to ask the questions, and maybe you're like, man, I didn't think about that, because maybe you hadn't seen that, and so maybe it's something you try, and maybe it's an effective tool for you later on.
Something I've been thinking about trying. I just haven't done it. Haven't had the cojones to do it yet. It's just throw out a full set of coots one day. That's all I throw out. What do you think, Gannon?
I think 100% work.
Do you?
100%.
Like, how many did I throw out? Like 2 dozen?
Yeah, because I mean, you go and look in those checks, or at a couple of the spots we hunt up north, and it's just straight confidence decoys.
Yeah.
Like, all those birds, they never see coot decoys.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I've been with you and we've used them.
Yeah.
And they work. 100% I believe they work.
We're gonna do it before you go back to this school, dude. We just hunt over all coots. I'll go buy another dozen.
I'm down.
You want to do it? Let's do it, man. Okay.
We're gonna get some ruddy decoys too.
No, man, all coots. That's all we're hunting on is coots. And we're gonna throw out 1 goldeneye. Hey, one of my favorite hunts with Gannon, he introduced me to this lake, and I remember, Gannon hasn't. Is that the only time you hunted off a kayak? Was with me that one time?
Yeah, that was the first time.
Dude, that was nuts. Remember, we're out there. It's like pitch dark. Me and Brian, we hunt off kayaks all the time. This is the first time we ever hunted off a kayak, but it was awesome. We go out there, and Gannon has a spotlight on the kayak, and Gannon spotlights this widgeon in the air, and that sucker almost dumped. Gannon almost he reached up and almost grabbed it out of the air. You remember that, man?
Yeah,
and
that was a crazy day.
Yeah, that was the first time I've ever hunted that particular area, and ever since then, it's been my favorite place to go.
It's a cool one.
Yeah,
sure.
dude. Yeah.
And that day, we had a strong north wind that day, right?
Yeah, we did.
8 to 10 miles an hour, which is perfect. And we smacked it too, man, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. It was easy. We were in shore by 8 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, and that's what it comes down to. Gannon had never hunted kayak before, and I talked him into it, and I didn't talk him very hard into it. He was like, "Let's go," but yeah, and having Gannon out there and just having that mentor. If you were to give anybody, any new duck hunter, any advice, what do you think is the most important part when it comes to getting ducks in? Is it the decoys? Is it the motion? Is it your cover? Is it your camo? Is it your calls? What if a new hunter were to go out, what should they focus on out of all those things?
I mean, obviously, you gotta have a good spot, but what we focus on huge. Like me and my dad is our hide. Like 100%. Like if we're concealed, I mean, you can control a few things. You can control your hide. You can control how your decoys are set up. You can't control the weather, the birds, and how they're gonna act. You can't. You just can't. They're uncontrollables. So I think the biggest thing for us is the spot and the hide. The decoys. I mean, decoys could be a little off, and the birds are still gonna work or something. But our biggest thing is concealment for sure.
That's it, huh? So
Yeah, I think so.
number one thing is concealment.
Yep.
So, like, it doesn't matter how good your decoys are, how good your calling is. If you're standing out in the middle of the water calling,
We've seen that this year.
it ain't gonna happen, right?
Yeah, but I mean, obviously you gotta have a good spot. Like, I've seen people shoot ducks over those old school, just straight black and white decoys that are made out of nothing.
Like they got them from their great grandpa.
Yeah, I mean, ducks are gonna do it if they're gonna do it. If they want to do it, they're gonna do it.
Yeah.
So, but hide's huge. It's a lot. It's overlooked a lot too.
Yeah, a lot of hunters. One of my favorite things is when I bring out new hunters, I go, "Hey, there's just a couple things I need you to do. One, like if ducks are coming in, try not to look at them.
Yep.
Like don't stare at them. Like I remember one of the first times I went out with you guys, you're like, "Hey, listen, if I say a duck, there's a duck coming in, you better be looking at the ground. Like we'll tell you when to stand up, but don't even try to look for it."
Yep.
And then the next favorite thing to do with new hunters is I'm like, don't point at them. Just don't point at them. And like regardless, they'll be like, there's one right there. And you're like, oh, listen, I told you.
The other
but
one,
they can't help it, man.
The other one that they do a lot is we see it in the blind. So new hunters, it's inevitable. They're going to stare right at the birds. That's the first thing they're going to do. They're going to point at the birds to show you where they're. Oh, there's birds over there, and they're pointing at the birds, showing.
It's
you
like they have a big old white flag in the air. Like, we're right here.
The other one I see is new hunters are notoriously slow on getting a gun up on birds.
Yeah.
And
I've seen that a
so
lot.
they cheat it, and the way they cheat it is by sticking their gun 4 foot outside of the blind, and so now they're waving that gun around and it's flagging the birds. So one of the things with ducks is that they got really good eyesight and they're not stupid. They're prey animals.
Especially this time of year.
They got a small brain, but they ain't stupid.
If there's something that they don't like, they're not coming near you. And so that sticking that gun up even a foot out of the blind and waving that gun around, that's something that's going to flag them saying, that's not safe, I'm not going there. And so, as a new hunter, the best thing you can do is, I mean, and it's tough, man. You get excited, you're ready to get up on these birds. I mean, the stiller you sit, the better your chance of getting birds to come into your decoys is going to be. And that's the hardest part. Ron, I've seen a dramatic difference on when we have new guys in the blind with us and when it's just Ron and I sitting in birds. Even in not such ideal conditions where we maybe don't have a cover we'd like to have, we'll get birds to come in because even without the cover, we're sitting perfectly still.
I mean, if you have your camo jacket on, you're ducked down, and you're not moving, the ducks really don't see you.
No,
that
I
bad.
mean, to them, everyone says they're colorblind to different things, but they obviously can tell when something's off.
Yeah.
Like if you're just standing there in the middle of a thing of reeds and they look down and they see a big black blob,
yeah.
they're like, oh, something's not right.
Yeah.
But it's weird, like definitely up there, I've gotten away with some hides that I would never even think of trying down here.
No.
Like the birds up there, they're just not as smart. It's their first stop. They're just not as smart. But down here, you gotta control everything you can. Everything's got to be perfect. Ducks got to be in a row, basically.
Yeah.
To have a good, successful hunt down here.
I was talking to some feller, and he was talking about maybe putting some more pit blinds in an Overton. Do you think that'd make a difference with people being able to cover up better?
I think that'd be good.
Or do you think the big box blinds are just okay too?
Just depends how good they brush them in. I mean, the problem about both is you get over top of both of those and there's just a big black hole, and you gotta put the dividers in to try to break yourself up.
Yeah.
Like we did on the Thanksgiving hunt where you put above cover and you try to just get some overhanging cover so they get over top and they don't see you.
Well,
yeah.
They don't see you anywhere. You got those fancy waders, and man, they can't see Sitka.
Unfortunately, I think they can.
I know they can. I've seen them flare. So, what other tips? You got any other tips? Like any other things that you think guys should do? What when it comes to calling, man? You think it's just practice, like repetition?
Like, let's see. I picked up a goose call probably. I started blowing a goose call when I was 8. Like, started trying to blow a goose call when I was 8, and I probably couldn't blow one well enough, like that I thought was well enough to call a geese till I was probably 11, and I didn't pick up because I started blowing duck call at the same time, and I probably wasn't confident in my duck call till I was 13 or 14. Like 5 years.
I got a long ways to go.
Yeah, like it's a lot of practice.
But you had a lot of good mentors along the way, right?
Yeah. Like my dad's been crazy good mentor. Like, he's literally taken me all over the United States. We went to Missouri, Arkansas, and Canada. He's been pretty dang good to me.
Your dad told me a story about being out with a guide once. And what did you tell that guide to do? Like he wasn't calling real good.
I don't know what story you're talking
You don't
about.
remember that? Your dad
in Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah, the guide wasn't blowing very good, so me and my dad kind of took over, and the guide was fine with it. He admitted that we were better callers than him, which was fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. He was a great guide. He did everything right, but he's like, you guys just go ahead and call. And so,
he had the X.
Yeah.
You had the calls.
Yeah, it worked out fine.
Did he shoot a limit too with you guys?
No, so in Canada, they don't let them shoot the guides.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Have you ever thought about going down to Mexico and doing one of those duck hunts?
That'd be sweet.
Yeah.
Those are crazy.
2 cases a day.
Yeah.
You know what?
That's 500 bullets. They say they go through 500 bullets a day.
That's wild.
I think one of the things about Gannon and his dad, you know, they tend to mentor people, and they just have kind of the attitude. I mean, they're very welcoming. It's a very welcoming family. It's whole family. I mean, just an excellent group of people to be around, and they really do that. They're going to correct you, but they're going to do it in a way that's not, hey, you're an idiot. You need to learn how to do this before you even come around me anymore.
No, they'll say that.
They will to a certain point, but they won't if they don't know you. They're not gonna.
No.
So well, I've heard stories of John standing up with blind and telling somebody to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
There's
but
definitely been those stories, but sometimes people need to hear that.
and that's the thing. But I mean, it's one of those things. Is how you mentor is almost as important as how much you mentor. So if you make it a positive experience where people want to come out and actually they want to get better and they want to learn, and that's part of it. Gannon came out with this. I didn't realize he was coming with this Thanksgiving. I got a brand new duck call, and I'm like, what? That call's gonna stay in my bag this trip. So, and it's just the only way you're gonna get better is to blow the call more, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you have somebody in your blind that's gonna increase your chances of success, Gannon in there with a duck call, I'm gonna let Gannon call the whole entire morning, and then maybe if it's slow, and I Ron did this with Gannon the blind, is people just call and said, hey, Gannon, give me some pointers. And so those are opportunities. When it's slow,
Gannon was like, put your call back in your bag.
Burn that call.
I didn't say that this time.
And that's the thing is if you got somebody that has better skills than you, use those skills to your advantage. And
there's nothing wrong with it either.
And ask the question. So, hey, how do I call better? I mean, so there's techniques, and it depends on who you talk to. Some guys say hut, some guys say 10. I think hut works better because I think it sounds more natural than 10 works. Mm-hmm. But those are all those things Gannon didn't learn it just by picking up a call, and he was actually talented at it. He worked it.
Yeah, and I was very fortunate with my dad growing up, him hunting. Like, he's hunted ever since I was younger. He was 12 when he picked it up from a guy out here, and he was a great mentor to him, and I was just lucky enough for him to be a great duck hunter too. And so I learned from very good duck hunters. They have killed a lot of birds in their day, and I definitely wouldn't be where I'm at without them. And that's 100% true. But you just gotta, it's all about the practice. Like duck calling, you're not gonna pick it up overnight. You're not gonna pick up, your shooting's not gonna be perfect overnight. You gotta work on it. You gotta keep shooting. You're not gonna kill birds just not shooting. So you gotta keep practicing and get better day by day.
Well, your dad was hunting back in the heyday out here, so back in the day,
back in the 90s,
the river out here was loaded with ducks, and they had a little place called Duck Hunting Mothers. It was a little duck hunting club out here. The ducks were incredible back then. So.
Yeah, no, but I think Gannon's right. I think it all comes down to if I would have been like, oh, Gannon's just a silly, 15-year-old. He don't know what he's doing. I would not be where I'm at today, and neither of us would be.
No.
And so it doesn't matter who you're getting your advice from. It's just better sometimes to shut up and listen. Like, you just have to. Like, and it might not be the best advice. You know, someone might be just running their mouth. But who cares? Just shut up and listen to them. And I think you'll do really good.
Well, that's anytime somebody offers you advice, you listen to the advice. And sometimes you're going to learn that you're going to use that. And sometimes you're just going to learn the guy's an idiot. And that's part of it. And
he might not be an idiot on certain days, man.
no, but some guys just want to give everybody the advice, and so you just have to kind of weed through it and take it with a grain of salt sometimes and find guys that are successful. So you obviously wouldn't want to take advice from somebody that's never got ducks on how to hunt ducks. But
I think the best way to get advice is you got to give a little. Like, if the ducks are working in a certain area, or you learn something of value that they might not know, you have to give it to them if you want to get advice. But you got to prime that pump.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing for people that have hunted a lot, and I know with you, like, we saw it, like, you put in the time, you put in the work. You didn't want it just handed to you. And that's huge. Like, you got to find those people that actually want it. You don't, like, you'll get those guys that are like, oh, where the birds working, and they're just wanting information. You actually go out and do it, and that's huge. Like, the drive is not for everybody.
Yeah, I think it's not only about that, but if you better not be asking those silly questions to experienced duck hunters, like, where did you shoot that duck? Like, that's not a good question.
What's this black duck with a white beak?
No, I mean, you could ask that question. That's a good question, but, like, it's not asking me, like, hey, where's your honey hole? Like, that's not the right question. Saying, like, hey, what kind of decoys did you use? Or what kind of spread you set up? Or what kind of ducks you saw? Like, the right questions, don't ask them for their honey holes, because that's just going to shut them off. But if you ask the simple questions like, man, you did really good, man. What did you do different? And they'll probably tell you, man. But if you're like, hey, where did you shoot that? It's the wrong question.
One of the best ways I think you go about it, too, when you're asking that question is, hey, I've been trying this, it hasn't been working. Do you have any suggestions? So a lot of times I'd be like, yeah, I wouldn't use those decoys. There's a big difference in quality of decoys when you start looking at, cheap bottom of the line decoys that are cheap plastic that just the sun hits them and they shine like a mirror, versus getting a good high end decoy. There's brands with Pro Series decoys that detailing on them, they're more of a matte decoy that isn't going to fly. One of the things that I noticed this year is I wear Beck sunglasses, and every pair of Beck sunglasses I had were a mirrored lens. Well, obviously when the sun hits that mirrored lens, it's going to flash. So I went back down to Beck's and I'm like, all right, what do you got that's not a mirrored lens? And so those things are things that you can do that you can control. And sometimes it's just asking for that advice. And, I appreciate Gannon being here with us and giving us that advice. I think you've made us better hunters, and we truly appreciate your help.
Yeah. I got one other thing, and then we'll wrap it up. But another thing is, like, don't be jealous of other hunters. If someone's smashing it, dude, and they're doing a good job, and you shot a ruddy that day, and that was it. That's all you shot, and they had their 4-man limit. Be happy for him, man. Don't be petty. Don't be like, oh, that guy's a piece of crap, and then start talking crap. No, you could be super pumped for other people. And be like, man, I am glad he shot those ducks. Like, he did a good job. He probably had a great day. I didn't have a great day. We played in the mud all day, Brian. That was sucky.
We get to do it next time. Well, I guess that's about all we're going to have for this week. Thanks, Gannon, for joining us and spending some time with us.
Thanks for having me.
If you're going to go out this weekend and go hunting, make sure you try to take somebody with you. If you can take them, make sure you teach them something. And if you can't do either of those, as always, hunt hard.
Cool. Thanks.